Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Tuesday, October 27th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. Ohio State's next game at Penn State is just 4 days away, and the game against Michigan in 46 days. Before we totally turn our attention to this week's game in State College, it seemed like a good idea to take a look back at what we might be able to learn from Ohio State's win over Nebraska. So my guest today is Buckeye Scoop's X's and O's guru, Ross Fulton. He just released a great piece looking at some of the things that the Buckeyes were doing schematically against the Cornhuskers and what Nebraska was trying to do against them. Ross, thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here, Tom. Thanks.
So let's start with the Ohio State offense. I want you to explain a concept that the Buckeyes ran a lot, which is tight zone. They have struggled some in short yardage situations, especially early in the game, it seemed like. So what is supposed to be happening when they on tight zone, and what was Nebraska doing to take that away?
Yeah, this is a concept that really goes back to Urban Meyer. This is probably his base run play throughout his career. And it's essentially, as the name suggests, it's an inside zone. It's almost like a dive in the sense that if you can imagine in your mind, Ohio State usually has the halfback offset to the quarterback. And the aim point for the halfback is essentially the backside A gap. So to let's say the inside leg of the guard on the side he's aligned on. It's a very quick hitting play. Ohio State likes to do it in short yardage because they can rush up to the line and do it real quick. And again, essentially it almost looks like a dive play, from 30 years ago in option football. And so now this play's been around for a while and teams know how to adjust. And the first thing that makes it work is because it does hit so close to the backside is you have to have the quarterback read threat, because to the side of the halfback, that defensive end is not going to be blocked. And so he can easily make the tackle if he just crashes down. So what makes it work is something to hold that defensive end. And what Nebraska and frankly what a lot of teams have done since Urban Meyer was here really is, especially when they're undermatched against Ohio State, they'll gamble. And they'll guess that Ohio State's probably not going to want to run their quarterback a bunch against us. So we'll take chances to try to create some negative plays. And that's a lot of what Nebraska did. They had their defensive end. He kind of looked like he was playing the quarterback run, but really he was cheating down, and he made several third and short tackles in the backfield. They also just more generally outnumbered Ohio State in the box. They kept 7 or 8 defenders, and they frequently combined that with a play side linebacker run blitz. And so all that's to say is that in a lot of those circumstances, Ohio State didn't really have a chance because there were just unblocked defenders in the backfield.
I saw a lot of people saying that Justin Fields was missing reads, but I mean, it seemed like there was a decent possibility, and it seems like Nebraska might have thought as well that there really, it might have looked like there were reads, but the play was just a straight handoff and not a read. Is that sort of what you thought?
That's my guess. Obviously, we can't know. He did keep one play. He kept, I think, on 2 plays. Only one was a tight zone, though. And what makes me think that they were not reads is just beyond like the common sense, like he could have kept one easily and run for 15 to 20 yards, is that as the game progressed, they used a lot of bootlegs, which again is sort of another way of trying to hold that backside unblocked defender. And then in the third quarter, they used, instead of the zone read, they paired that tight zone with a run pass option. And so essentially Fields was then reading that kind of what's called an overhang defender, basically the defender that's between the offensive tackle and the inside in the next wide receiver. And if that guy crashes down the run, he would pull it and just throw a quick hitch route to the backside. And Nebraska, to protect themselves, was playing so soft in their corner coverage to put more players in the box that those are just wide open. In fact, the one there where Chris Olave got hurt was a good example, one where he caught it and could keep running because there's just no one around him. And so that's another way. Again, there's ways that you can sort of protect the inside zone play, but I think we all have to keep in mind that as the first game, both offensively and defensively, Ohio State kept it pretty vanilla. Probably, again, a combination of being the first game plus the fact that they're playing Penn State next week.
Yeah, and speaking of the fact that it was the first game, I want to get your thoughts on the Ohio State offensive line and how they played overall on Saturday, because I came away from watching it live thinking that they were behind where I was maybe expecting them to be. And, as we said, it is the first game and obviously very early. And this is a weird, disjointed lead up to the season. Not a lot of contact until recently. So, I feel like they probably, if it was a little behind where you expected them to be, maybe they should get a little bit of a pass for that. But then on Monday, Pro Football Focus College had the Buckeyes graded as the best Power 5 offensive line of the week. And then 4 of the 5 offensive linemen, Thayer Munford, Josh Myers, Wyatt Davis, and Nick Petit-Frere, all graded out as champions. So how did you think they did?
Yeah, I thought they did pretty well. So again, I my first rule of thumb is I don't blame the offensive line if there's more defenders than they can block. Like that's not their fault. That's a scheme issue. And so that's on the coaches. And so I thought that Harry Miller for his first start maybe had a little bit of struggles. There was I think he had a tough matchup. And I thought as a whole, the offensive line, maybe this was what Dave was referring to after the game in terms of them moving around. I thought there were times where maybe the offensive line should have been combination blocking or double teaming together before going off to the next level. And there were guys left on one blocks. But overall, I thought they did well, especially you could see it once Ohio State moved away from running tight zone as much and used more of, as I discussed in my article, more what I would call mid zone or wide zone, which hit further to the opposite side of the halfback. Were really what Ohio State relied on a lot last year. There were big holes. And actually, if you take out sort of some of those third and short plays that didn't convert, they ran the ball fairly well. I would like to see the running backs be a little bit more explosive and break some tackles in the open field. And to me, that was actually more of an issue than how the offensive line played.
All right, so let's go to the other side of the ball now. It felt like coming into the year, we knew more or less what this Ohio State offense was going to look like, thanks to the continuity in both personnel and the coaching staff. But on defense, the Buckeyes were running the same single high look as last year on Saturday, kind of. Can you explain what they were doing differently and why you think they did it?
Yeah. So what they were doing differently is I would say they're still primarily basing out of their single high cover 3 look. So you see the middle of the field safety pre-snap, and then he takes the middle third of the field. Each corner takes the outside third of the field. So you break it down into zone. But they increasingly used a split safety coverage pre-snap look. And so again, like what most people are used to seeing pre-snap, you had 2 safeties splitting up the field. Now, why they did it, this gets into where we probably need more data, because you never quite know if it was for a Nebraska specific or this is a trend, because a lot of what they were doing, both in their cover 3 and with split safeties, is they had a lot of problems early on adjusting to all the motion and shifting Nebraska was doing. Now this is something that opponents you have to be ready for, because last year, this was something that opponents caught on the end, because the way they played their single high, they want to keep the slot corner on the slot receiver, the Sam linebacker on the tight end, etc. And so people would move them around to force them to shift. And so what they did instead after that first quarter was we're just going to stay in our place, play our cover 3 shell or, cover 4 shell, and not adjust as much to motion. The other thing they did with the split safeties, which may continue going forward, is they use it a lot to run blitz. And so, they use quite a bit of they bring the boundary corner on a blitz, or they bring the Sam linebacker, and the defensive backs would rotate post snap into basically back into cover 3, just in different spots. And by doing it that way, you probably remember last year, we occasionally see Pete Warner go from Sam linebacker and drop back to play the deep middle of the field. This avoided that. So they put Marcus Williamson, who's, normally the slot corner, as the boundary safety. And so it made it easier to rotate, and then you're not asking Baron Browning to drop back to play middle of the field safety. Now, it does put then a little bit more pressure on the linebackers to play out of the box, but these are the trade-offs that go into those kind of decisions.
What did they do in terms of trying to control the quarterback run game? And, with Sean Clifford on deck, he finished with 17 carries for 119 yards in Penn State's opening loss against Indiana. Do you think that they'll probably try and address this weekend's game in, similar to what they did last weekend?
Yeah, they're gonna continue to see it until they effectively stop it, and that's what Penn State did effectively against Ohio State last year. And so I'm sure will be a big part of the game plan, and that's part of where the split safeties come into play too. I think you and I actually discussed this in the offseason where, each kind of defensive scheme has its advantages and disadvantages. And one thing having 2 safeties can do is they can both play the run. And so now you have the 9 defenders, essentially the 7 in the box, plus your 2 safeties, versus when you're single high, it's basically only that additional safety, and the other three corners are handling their men. So you get an extra defender, you can have a safety account for the quarterback. And then again, some of those run blitzes are to take away the backside where the quarterback might keep it. And so these are steps. I think they referred to before the season that they had made some modifications to try to deal with the quarterback run game. And I'm sure this is some of it. But we'll continue to see. And I think we frankly maybe see more against Penn State that sort of gives us our answers on how they want to address this.
Now, you've mentioned the run blitzes a few times. It seemed like they did little, if any, blitzing in passing situations. Now, I'm sure a lot of that is just based on the fact that the Huskers weren't doing a lot of drop back passing, but Ohio State finished with 3 sacks and Nebraska attempted just 20 passes. So that's not a bad ratio there. Do you think that they'll mostly try and get there with the front four again at Penn State? And then, if that doesn't work, then you bring some more pressure?
Well, probably, because this goes to our previous discussion, which is blitzing puts you out of position against a running quarterback. And so, in fact, that happened early against Nebraska where they did bring a 3rd down blitz. And I think Martinez scrambled for 15 or 20 yards. And so, the more conservative you are sort of keeping your 7 guys dropping, the more chances you have to contain the quarterback. That said, I think it somewhat depends going forward how much pressure they're able to generate. I thought the defensive ends and the defensive line as a whole played better as the game went on. I think there were some sort of questionable in terms of the snap counts amongst the defensive ends, but we'll see if that was maybe just the first game. And again, Penn State will tell more of the tale than maybe the first game against Nebraska will. But, the more you can generate pressure with your front four, the less you need to blitz. But if they can't get kind of the pressure they got last year, they may need to do more of it.
Well, you just mentioned the snap counts up front. They had some different personnel packages they ran in the back end as well. They started getting Nebraska more into those kind of 3rd and medium, 3rd and long situations, which let them get the new nickel package out there. Sort of explain what that looked like this year for Ohio State, or at least last Saturday for Ohio State, and kind of what you thought they were trying to accomplish with that.
Yeah, so they basically bumped Baron Browning from Sam to Mike. Josh Proctor played Sam, linebacker. And then for the most part, Cam Brown came in for Marcus Williamson, who I think we can to characterize Williamson now as sort of like a safety corner hybrid in the scheme with more of the split safety. So let's say they brought in a 3rd true corner for more of a hybrid guy. And so again, this lets them play more cover 1 man on 3rd down, which is what they like to do a lot of. Obviously it's a good role for Proctor. Now, I do think the battle for who's going to play more between Proctor and Hooker at the deep safety spot is ongoing. I mean, they both took snaps there. So, but I think either way in the nickel, whichever one's not on the field, that one will come in. And I'm assuming Proctor will stay in that sort of closer to the box role because he, as the coaches have said, he has more versatility to play man coverage on a tight end or, insert against the run game.
Now, going into this weekend's game at Penn State, schematically, what is to you the biggest concern for Ohio State on either side of the ball heading into that game?
Yeah, so for the defense, I think it's the quarterback run game. Obviously, last year caused some issues. They did have a plan for it, and then when Clifford went out, actually because the backup tight quarterback was so big, they were able to they messed with what Ohio State planned for a little bit. And then, covering Pat Freiermuth. They put a lot on Pete Werner last year. He played a lot of man coverage on Freiermuth because Penn State likes to put him away from the trips wide receiver so that they can feature him. And so Pete Werner had a lot of man coverage on him or a lot of dropping and solely being responsible. And again, I'm not sure that Baron Browning can quite fill that role, so they may, again, play more split safeties to sort of change that up. And then for the Ohio State offense, Penn State is one of those teams that, they always just hold the Ohio State offense to fewer points than they probably should score. And a lot of that, again, is they use very similar strategies, frankly, to what Nebraska did. They try to overload the box. They try to mess with the backside on the quarterback read to get unblocked defenders. And they compensate by playing really soft corner coverage. So if I'm Ohio State personally, and this may have gone into the game plan, I'm going to keep throwing those outside hitches and outs to Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson until they put defenders on them. Like if you're going to give me 12 yards, I'm just going to keep pulling it, throwing it, pulling it, throwing it. But again, this sort of goes into, they've been in the past able to sort of slow down the Ohio State run game enough to sort of make it touch and go for them. So I think a lot of that will be, how does Penn State handle the fact that Ohio State really is probably a better passing team right now, the running team, and then how does Ohio State in turn respond?
Well, you can find Ross's full recap of that Nebraska game and the schematic look at all of that at BuckeyeScoop.com. We have a ton of great content there. Tony Gerdeman just posted his Michigan Monday piece yesterday, looking at Michigan's big win, season opening win over Minnesota, and why, Michigan might not want to punch its ticket to the college football playoff just yet. Might be a little early for that. Plus, lots of other great content there. We'll be talking to Ryan Day later today, as well as some other players and coaches. So we'll have that at Buckeye Scoop as well. This would be a great time to become a member of the site. This is quite a big week, as you undoubtedly have figured out by now, with the Penn State game on deck. Tony will be there covering the game for us. We'll have some high school football coverage Friday night on our way to Pennsylvania, and a whole bunch of other great stuff coming this week as well. That's all at BuckeyeScoop.com. You can sign up for membership right now, and your first month will get you through more than halfway through the college football regular season. And if you don't like it at that point, I don't know what to tell you. If we don't have it at BuckeyeScoop.com, you as a Buckeye fan probably don't need it. So give us a shot today at BuckeyeScoop.com. Also, make sure you check out all of our great podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, wherever fine podcasts are sold. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of those. You can subscribe right there. Also, leave us a 5-star rating and review while you're at it. That'll do it for today. Thank you, Ross, for joining me. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.